Wonderful. Hello, everybody. So, hi, I'm Raphaël. I am an artist from Paris, originally Paris, France, and I am working with code most of the time. That is my medium of choice. I started with creative coding 10 years ago, and I have been active at different times, more or less, and creating all sorts of things. And I got a lot more active in the last year and a half. My practice evolved in different directions, and maybe I'll have time to show you a little bit of that. But the goal today is really to give you a quick taste of what creative coding is, and to let you see really what it takes, which is not necessarily a lot, and to give you the keys to get started yourself if you so want, or possibly to get an understanding of what gets into the creation of generative art, so that you can, if you want, also collaborate with artists who do so, because this is more and more common today, even more than the last time I did this introduction, actually. Seeing artists who don't code collaborating with artists who do and making beautiful works this way. So I want you to feel very comfortable to interrupt me and ask questions at any time. I'll give you just a quick time to introduce yourself, since we're a relatively small group. You can have like 2 sentences to tell us who you are and what you expect from this class. And then I'll show you a bit of. I wanted to start this one's a little different from the last time, with showing you what got me excited, or partly. Oh, sorry, I'm doing things I shouldn't do as I'm talking. But yeah, so I will show you some of the things that got me excited about generative art, about creative coding, about digital art when I got started 10 years ago. Wanted to go on a trip back memory lane. But before we do that, please, who are you? What are you doing here? No, who are you, and what do you expect from this class? So maybe I can point my finger at people one after the other. So from the top, that would be Abeyua. Sorry, Abi, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. Feel free to unmute or type in the chat if you don't want to be heard.
Hi, I'm Abby Ayua. Most people call me Abby, multidisciplinary artist, and I've taken a creative coding course in the past, so I'm just, wanting to refresh and maybe learn new things and learn new resources also.
Wonderful. Bodh.io.
Hi, Raphael. I'm Bodio, and I am originally a printmaker who's been getting more into digital art and animation, and I really want to learn more about generative art and how I can incorporate some of my lino cut designs in a generative way. So I'm really excited about this course, this lecture.
Fantastic. Welcome. Next, we have Boria.
That's me. It's
your
host.
That's you.
And just to say something a little bit about myself.
Yes, but please go ahead.
You know me from the second cohort. I'm actually a resident from the second cohort, and now I'm a manager of the residency, and I'm really happy to welcome you again. I've actually watched several of your Twitch streams. It's very exciting to see them. Your way of looking at creative coding is a little different than most of the people's that I've seen. You give a human touch to the creative coding aspect, which I can relate to, and thank you so much for that. And yeah, thank you for being here with us.
My pleasure. Thanks. That's a lovely introduction. So the next we have Bruta Quintez. And I see Echo typing, who is also next. Bruta, Bruta, are you here? Otherwise, we'll move on to Echo. Yeah, let's move on to Echo then. Do you want to speak or do you want to type? Oh no,
hello.
Nata's here.
I'm
we
sorry.
got you.
I'm sorry. I'm outside the moment. It's a bit noisy. So we are a team. We are two people. We are married before a month, and I'm a graphic designer, UI designer, an artist, and my partner is a creative coder. He managed to do a few creative coding projects that are quite successful. A few more are coming. I can't code. I like it as an idea, but I never have time about that. But I hope you can show me that it's not that hard, so I can start doing it now. Thank you.
Yes, that's the goal. Wonderful. Echo, you'd rather type, I see, maybe? Or if you want to unmute, that's also okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Oh, no, sorry, I was talking to Echo now, Echo 33.
Sorry.
But yeah, thank you. Thank you and welcome. Okay, then I guess Echo is typing, so I will just ask Ella B. Ella B.
Hi, Raphael. It's so great to meet you. I'm an artist and I live in New York City. I actually minored in computer science at school, but I've jumped in right at the end and did a lot of WebGL and was like just playing around with the possibilities. But I make cyanotypes, which is a very hands-on physical process. It's sun printing. And I would love to make like a digital environment where you can print cyanotypes just using code, and I feel like it's totally possible. So that's what I'm bringing today. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. I believe there was somebody from a previous cohort who was also doing cyanotype. Interesting. Maybe there's a connection there. I don't know.
Yeah, she invited me into the foundation space, and she really helped me. Claudia, she's incredible.
Yes. Ah, I see. The cyanotype connection. Wonderful. Welcome. Next is Flo, and after Flo will be Franco. Hello, Flo. Hello, Wilder Art Lab. 3, 2, 1. We'll move on. You can come back later if you...
They're typing.
They're typing. Oh, sorry, I didn't see. Yes, all right, typing is fine. Oh, I see Echo has written, I'm Echo33. I've been doing generative art since 1999. Started with a C64. That's a Commodore 64, an old computer that is very favored by the demo scene. Then moved over to Max MSP. Oh, there are lots of technical words. These I do work with P5, Python, and okay, so yeah, some programming languages and libraries and such things. Yes, Echo is already very knowledgeable, and you should absolutely follow them on Twitter, where they made some really cool threads about the history of computer art. So yeah, next up is Franco Bellavita.
So yeah, I'm Franco. Visual pieces. I do analog collage, and I also do sound design for specific projects like VR, audiovisual, site-specific installation. So yeah, this is basically what I'm mainly doing. I do a lot of collaborative work with other artists, and I'm interested in starting to get into artificial intelligence and trying to cross-pollinate my physical work with some digital tools. And I think, it would be interesting to get a little bit of coding learning, because I actually don't know nothing about coding. I always been very afraid of it. Like, since I'm a very physical work person with the arts, like the coding has been kind of a boundary, I guess, but I know I could do things with it. So yeah, I'm super interested.
Fantastic. Welcome. Yeah, hopefully I can make it less scary. If that's the main thing that happens today, I will be happy. Next is Yuri, and then will be Joel. So Yuri. I see you unmuted, but I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes, perfect.
Yeah, I'm just using the iPad for Discord for the first time, so I have to push to talk. So I'm Yuri. I'm making analog and digital collages since 2003. And last year I started making a bit of like learning processing. I wanted to make collages, and so with generative art, so putting the layers and like a collage. So, but since I don't code, I would like to use other images, and I try to make this project. I did a bit, but never released. And recently, I got a lot. Also, very interested in recursion. So repeating the same like image or like square, whatever, in the same piece. So I tried to make this another generative project. I downloaded the template from FXHash, so got the one of the templates that had already P5, started messing around, and it started working, but also just stopped. Like I didn't get enough variations. So the one or two pieces, they really look nice, but I'm not sure if I could do 20 or 100, like how I could add more variations to make an interesting piece. So and also another thing that I didn't manage to do, animation. So making the thing go up inside FXHash. Outside, if you go to the processing website, it worked, but inside it didn't work. But
okay, yeah. Well, hopefully we can get to that eventually. By the way, this class will be the first of two. There will be a second class that we called advanced, though I think the word is unfortunate because it might make it more scary than it needs to be. But in the second class, which is I believe happening 2 weeks from now, we'll get into the specifics of FXHash and minting generative art. But for now, we'll start with the basics of creative coding to really understand what it takes to code. So yeah, next up we have Joel Meshach.
Hey, thank you, Raf. My name is Joel Meshach. I'm a digital collage artist, basically focused on telling stories within the fashion space in this what I would call like a post-modern era. Keen on obviously learning more about coding, but just like Franco said, as soon as I hear coding, I'm like running away and like, no, I don't know where to begin. But yeah, I look up to quite a few artists who do generative art, like Linda Dunia. So I see the stuff she does, and I'm like, oh my, I really want to learn how to do that. So I guess it's the beginning. Thank you.
Wonderful. Feel free to share the links to that artist in the chat so people can check it out. Next up, we have Lila, and then will be Natalie. Lila.
Hi everyone. I'm Lila. I'm interested in landscape and relationship between the human experience. I'm very interested in bringing technology into I'm interested in coding and AI and all the fun stuff. You asked what we're expecting from this class. How to get started? What do we do? The tools, where to go, and look for more tools to learn and start, creating with code. And that's it. Thank you.
Wonderful. Natalie, you're next, and then will be Reverse Butcher. Oh no, Reverse Butcher said they couldn't speak, so yeah, feel free to type. So next will be Touch Sound Art. But Natalie, welcome. Is Natalie here? Another second, or two, or three, or four, or five. Moving on to Touch Sound Art. Touch Sound Art.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Hi. Well, I'm a sculptor, and I've been working with code for the last maybe like 10 years, maybe a bit more, but I use it quite differently. I use it to generate some sculptural forms in 3D. And when I started out with processing, and I was doing some interactive art. And now I try to kind of improve with JavaScript and do interactive things for the screen in 3D.
Fantastic. So I hear that there are already quite a few people here who already kind of know the basics quite well. So I'm going to ask you something. If you're
sorry.
Yeah.
When you said Natalie, did you mean Nathaniel?
Oh, sorry. I misread. I'm so sorry. Yes. I misread your name, but yeah, if you don't mind, I'll finish that thought, and then you can introduce yourself. My bad. So yeah, just for people who already know a lot, I'm going to enlist you in helping to answer questions. So if people have questions, you can write them in the chat, and either I'll get to them, or the very knowledgeable people who are already there will be able to help as well. So if you don't mind doing that, that would be extremely nice. You'll be my teaching assistants. So yeah, Nathaniel, sorry for the misreading.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. Hello, nice to meet you. I'm Nathaniel Stern. I've been making digital and ecological art and writing for 20 plus years. I'm a professor of art and mechanical engineering. Though admittedly, when it comes to coding, I've been doing it for a long time, but I feel a bit like a hack, and most of it's been interactive art. So I've only been inspired by generative art of late, and I'm excited to kind of delve deeper into some of the more organic techniques that Gen artists use. And I hope we can get to some of that at some point.
Fantastic. Yeah. And yeah, for questions that are more specifically about the creative process, please ask, because there's so much to say. I will talk more about technical stuff, but I'm very happy to answer questions about the creative process, which is like an infinite landscape. Next up, we have Victor, and then we'll finish with WLT. So Victor, hello.
Hi, Raf. Nice to hear you once more. It's always a pleasure to hear you. I'm a great fan of some of your streams, and it's always nice to see how you teach. I've been also doing some workshops about processing and other creative coding tools like Blender and so. And it's always nice to see some other people teaching, so you get how they teach, how they can engage, because it's there is so many things in your head and that you want to communicate, so the tactics that you use to let the people get the knowledge without scaring them about how to do it, because sometimes I feel I'm too technical or too too material, like teaching too much, too fast or too slow. So I'm curious to see how are you going to handle this class.
Well, the pressure, yeah. Well, but what you said enables me to say specify something, which is that please feel very free to ask me to slow down or go faster. There's very different levels of people here, so I will be very happy to make this as I'm going to focus on the people who need to understand the basics today. Please do feel free to tell me to repeat something. If you need a different example for something, let me know. If I should go slower, you can ask me to explain something in a different way. And even if you don't know what your question is, but you're sort of confused, you can tell me that you don't know what your question is and you're confused, and I'll try to explain it again. So please, it will not be annoying. There will probably be at least one or two other people who have the same question or are also confused. So please, yes, feel very comfortable telling me to stop and go back and backtrack a little bit, rewind. It's not going to be a problem. All right. So WLT, you're last.
Hi, so I'm Win. That's spelled WYNLYN. I was a Discord noob, so I regret putting my handle as WLT. But you can call me Win for short, so it's WYN. I'm a painter. I come from a traditional fine art background. But recently, I started creating generative video art as an extension of my very physical painting practice. So I've been using software, GAN training on my own paintings. So I have no coding knowledge, but I'm really keen to learn to create more custom outputs for my generative videos.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you. And I see Reverse Butcher wrote something. I'm a VR artist and poet. I make collages and traditional art as well as digital art. I know absolutely nothing about creative coding. Great. I'm hoping to learn more about what it can do and where to get started. Yeah, perfect. That's what I'm planning to do. And I think we had another one, which was Flow. And I lost the message. Yeah. Oh, and M. Passin. I'm Emanuele, a newbie generative artist from Italy. Salve. I'm mainly using P5.js to create minimalistic abstract art. Yeah, cool. And Flow, painter and creative coder. Nice. I work with P5.js. Yes, that's what we're going to use today. And I'm very curious to learn more about your process. Cool. Yeah, let's try to keep a bit of time at the end for questions about the process then, since I'm going to talk mainly about how to get started. But before we talk about the code itself, I wanted to do something a little bit different to my previous classes with the school and show you some of the things that I saw when I was getting started 10 years ago that got me inspired. And so it's going to be a bit of for me, a trip back memory lane, and for you, maybe things you haven't seen yet. Let me see if I can share my screen. Go live. Yeah, that looks all right. I hope it works. It looks a bit different now. Okay, can you see that? 5 FPS. Ooh, that's gonna not be good for video. Yeah, I'll put some links so you can also watch it yourself, I guess, if it's 5 FPS streaming quality. Can I make that higher? Is that an option? No, it doesn't look like it. Okay. Well, then just let me know. All right, so this is a piece. It's one of the first pieces that really got me excited about creative coding. I'm gonna open it on YouTube so I can share the link. Just a sec. In the chat. Let's do that. Yeah, it's called Delicate Boundaries. It's by an artist called Chris Sukru. And yeah, she developed this piece that what I really love about this is the way that, you don't see much of it, but you get the idea. It's very simple. It's those artificial beings of light that live in a screen,
we cannot see anything.
You cannot see anything.
We are still seeing the first page, not the YouTube.
Okay. Let me try that again. Screen share. Oh, it was application share. Okay, screen 2. Okay, yeah, the UI is a little confusing. All right, so yeah, so there you go. Hopefully the FPS is not too bad. Well,
yeah, that's much better.
Okay. but yeah, you can get the general idea, even if it looks like a slideshow. And the link is in the chat. But yeah, you have these amoebas, creatures of light that live in the screen, and then when you approach your hand, they move out of the screen and into your hand. Very poetic, very simple. Technically, I mean, you can. Maybe I don't want to explain how it's done, and you can try to guess, because it's a nice little puzzle, artistic puzzle. But even if you don't understand how it's done, and that's also an interesting point about digital art. It's like, how much Kinect. Yeah, that's probably something. There was probably something like a Kinect involved. I don't remember exactly what device Chris used, but yeah, similar. And yeah, it's like technology can be used to generate poetry, like visual poetry, interactive poetry, and it doesn't have to be about the technology of a head camera. Yeah, something like that. So yeah, exactly. You have a camera overhead, and then you also have a projector. So you detect the shape of the hand coming to the screen, and you can tell where it is, and that tells your program to make those creatures move towards the hand, and then you remove them from the screen and show them in the projector. Leap motion didn't exist at that point, but yeah, that was like 2007. Actually, it was already a few years old when I saw it, I think in 2009 or so, 2010. But yeah, beautiful piece. Yeah, one of my all-time favorites. And I'm showing you stuff on purpose that is sort of that is not entirely in the screen. And one of the reasons why I wanted to show you stuff that is hybrid between the digital and the physical. Is it okay? Is it's because I feel like a lot of our NFT age is living in the screen. Yeah, Singapore, exactly. You're right, Win.
I'm from
Are you in
Singapore.
Singapore? Oh, you are. Nice. So yeah, I was working for the company who did this. I didn't. So Art+Com is a Berlin-based company which was really pioneering in the world of kinetic art. They invented a lot of these techniques that now you find in many places, and they made this beautiful piece, which yeah, I remember finding extremely inspiring back then, and still do. Also very poetic. But yeah, I wanted to show you that creative coding and digital art can also live in the real world, because we've spent so much time living in screens in the recent times, and also NFTs are also very screen based. Yeah, trying to also remind everybody that digital art can live in the physical world. Daniel Rosen, the wood mirror, also beautiful, beautiful reference. Absolutely, I was a big fan as well of Daniel Rosen's. Yeah, 1999. I didn't realize it was from back then. Yeah, it's a mirror with a camera that just flips little pieces of wood. Yeah, kinetic sculptures. And also early on, I was fascinated by the work of the Graffiti Research Lab. They were so it was started by Evan Ross and James Powderly out of I-Beam in New York at a residency they did at I-Beam. And their motto, I think, was creating, was it like digital tools for tomorrow's vandals? Thanks, something like this. Yeah, the Graffiti Research Lab. And I was early on involved in the Berlin and the Berlin chapter, the Paris chapter first, and then the Berlin chapter of the Graffiti Research Lab. And this was a beautiful tool. Like they created this super intuitive thing where you would just paint a building with a laser. It was a combination of the laser that would act as your brush and a projector that would create the trace, and then a program that generates those shapes and the drips. Every component is pretty simple, but put together, it creates a really compelling experience. And you can tell by the the resolution of the video that it's from a good more than 10 years ago. All of this is creative coding, but not only. So creative coding, it's one brick among or one tool in your tool set. And if you're a painter, if you're an illustrator, if you're a filmmaker, if you're a photographer, collage artist, anything, you can use code as part of your arsenal of tools to make your art interactive, to make your art generative, to do things with your art that maybe you couldn't necessarily do, or not at that scale, without using code. I wanted to show you this video. I love it, but without the sound, it's not gonna. Or let's see if you can hear. But with low FPS, it's a waste. So I'll just put the links. I'll just put the link to it. Copy link to original in there. Yeah. I'll do that, and you can watch it later. It's one of my favorite artists, Jeremy Bailey. He's hilarious and master of awkward performance art, and just a huge fan. And I'll show you this one afterwards. I'll show you this one last for a good reason. It will become clear in a second. And this one, come on, why is it not? Okay, I'll show it on YouTube. And this is from Nervous Systems. So Jessica Rosenkrantz, and I forgot the name of the other of the guy. They're working together on physical, like a procedural design. Jesse, yeah. parametric design, procedural design, and they're making physical objects, usually fashion and jewelry, that are 3D printed. Well, first of all, generated and then 3D printed. They make a very clever use of physical simulation. So physics simulation, which is a branch of computer science that reproduces physical processes in a computer. And in this case, you could see they show it at that point that they're basically using this thing is made of hinges. So the whole dress is made of hinges, and you couldn't print that whole dress in the space that's available in even industrial 3D printers. So they're squeezing it, they're folding it using these processes, these physical simulations, to reduce the size, and then they print it folded and then fold it afterwards, which is just a mind-blowing idea. So yeah, there you have the printed dress folded, and then you have to loosen the hinges until you can unfold the whole thing, and it's wearable. Yeah, huge fan of nervous systems. You should absolutely check out all of their work. It's just quite incredible. So yeah, code can be used for all these things, and I haven't shown you a line of code yet because it's not the most important, really. The most important is the vision that you have and your imagination and what you want to make, and then you can bend code to your will to make these things happen. Of course, today we're going to see much simpler things, but everything comes from very simple principles. Once you master those principles, it's just a matter of learning small, like little by little, incremental things that will lead you somewhere unexpected. Okay, and the last one is a piece from 12 years ago by somebody called Lauren Mccarthy. And Lauren Mccarthy is an artist who's working a lot with questions of social interactions and how we humans interact with each other. And this was a really funny project, which was based, if I remember correctly, on this idea that Lauren felt a little socially awkward, or like she wasn't smiling enough to people, and so to appear more friendly, she built this device which provides you physical feedback if you don't smile. So you get poked in the back of your head with that. There's this sensor on your cheek that checks if you're smiling, and if you're not, you get a reminder that you should smile. Yeah, so it's obviously very tongue-in-cheek and not not meant seriously, but yeah, a pretty simple idea. But the concept is quite strong, and the execution is funny and simple and playful, and yeah, you don't have to be like extremely technical to make something like this, and it involves electronics and physical computing as well, which is another part of creative coding where you can make things physical, like starting to using motors, things like Arduinos, which you might have heard of, and yeah. Big fan of women not needing to smile. Yes. I think that was probably there was probably some commentary on that in the hat. You're teaching Arduino this semester. Perfect. There you go. You're already there. So yeah. Those were a few examples, and Lauren, the creator of that hat, that whole project, and many other even more impressive projects more recently. I don't know if Lauren would be necessarily happy that that's the project I picked, because she made like much more ambitious projects since then and more advanced. But yeah, that's the first one I saw from her, and I still love it. And Lauren has created P5.js, which is the tool that we're going to use today. And P5.js is based on an earlier project called Processing, which is still very much active. Actually, I forgot to mention it, but I recently started working as being a fellow of the Processing Foundation, and I'm the Processing community lead. So I definitely can't say anything bad about processing. No, I could, but I don't want to because it's awesome. It's where I started 10 years ago. And it has different strengths to what P5 is. The reason why I picked P5 for this introduction is because in the context of NFTs, a lot of the interactive work that you're going to see, notably on FX Hash, which people have mentioned before, is done with JavaScript. Because it needs to run in a web browser. And processing at the moment, when processing started, it could run in the browser, but technology has moved on, and now it's not possible to run the kind of programs that you can make in processing in the browser easily. So P5.js is sort of a reimagination of that ideal of having creative coding run in the browser. And so I picked P5.js because I want you to be able to use P5.js to make things on FX Hash, for example, or make interactive NFTs on Theia or Object, which you can absolutely do with P5.js, and many artists are doing. Yes, the Happiness Hat artist created the coding language P5.js. Yes, that is correct. Lauren Mccarthy was the creator of P5.js and ran the project for, I believe, 8 years before passing the lead to I don't remember who started, but now the lead is Q, she's leading they are leading the project now. Sorry. That's and if you want to read a story of processing in P5, how it came to be, this is a great article by the creators of processing. Yep. All right. So that's it for context introduction. Do you have questions so far? Anything that I mentioned? I mean, that's more context. I don't. But yeah, if you have questions, feel free to ask. Otherwise, I'll move on to the more practical part of this introduction.
You mentioned people doing interactive art on Object and NFTs. I've mostly only seen generative art. Is there a resource where we can find more of the interactive art happening on chain?
That's a good question. Well, you can search for HTML objects. I do have some examples. Actually, I have some. I have some here. I mean, it's not like the very first interactive piece on Hikednunk at the time, and now Theia was The Magician by Macchio135, aka Lionel Radisson. It's taking forever to load from IPFS. That's why I didn't plan to show it. But yeah, I will show more of that next in the next class actually, because then we'll get into how to practically make that. So put that question on ice, and we'll get to it in 2 weeks. Yep. Any other question?
Yeah. Can I do a question?
Yeah. Please go ahead.
Like, do you need a lot of coding knowledge? Let's say if you want to do a physical installation where you will have reactive sound and maybe some sort of something that connects the movement of the people with what's happening. Do you need lots of coding to get to that, or are there simple ways to create some sort of synergy between sound, image, and body movements?
Yeah, it's not necessarily that hard. There's several resources. There's something called ML5.js that is a library for machine learning. Sorry, on the web, and you have face tracking, body tracking, things like that in ML5. There's another one called hands-free.js. Made by somebody called Oz Ramos, hands-free.js.
What's the website for it? Free.
Yeah. Well, that's the npm package, but yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And it's free. Yeah, there, for example.
Is it open collective?
I'll put the links in there. ML5. Yeah, so those are probably the easiest ways to get started with that. Yeah, any other question? One last before I get started with the code. Okay, then let's get started. All right, so if you want to follow along, I'll give you the link to this website, which is the P5JS online editor. And the P5JS online editor is a wonderful tool that lets you write code inside of your web browser, so you don't need to install anything. That's another advantage if you compare it to processing, where you have to download a piece of software. So to get started, it's pretty good for that. And yeah, you get to the editor, and this is how it looks. Like, I'm not logged in, so that's the default appearance. You see, we're going to explain everything that appears here, but this is basically the simplest P5JS program, or close to the simplest P5JS program that you can write. It's already there, already written. And what we can do before we do anything is, so you see there's a big play button here. So let's go ahead and click that button and see what happens. And you see what happens is we get a big gray square on the right. And that gray square is the output of the code that is written on the left. This is code. This is computer code. Computer code is just text. It's just a bunch of letters, bunch of words. They're written in a specific way, in a specific language, just like English is a specific language, or Chinese, or French, or Spanish, what have you. A programming language is a special case, in a way, of language. It's not a spoken language, but it also has a certain vocabulary. It has a certain grammar, we talk about syntax in programming. So it has its own syntax, which means the rules that you have to follow to write a program that is valid in that particular programming language. There's different programming language. This is JavaScript. That's the language in which P5JS is written. P5JS is what we call a library, which might be confusing because that's where the metaphor starts breaking a little bit. It's not a place where you're going to go and find books. A library is essentially code that has been written by someone else so that you don't have to. So it's like a module that you add to your project. In this case, it's already added for you because it's the P5JS editor, so it has it built in. But yeah, this is JavaScript with P5JS, the library, added on top, so you can write the kind of words that are in the dictionary of P5JS. This might be a little confusing. I'm not sure I'd give the best explanation of it, so if you have questions on this, please feel free to interrupt. But essentially, P5JS is going to give you some extra tools to what JavaScript, the basic JavaScript, is giving you, and it makes it a little easier to learn than if you were trying to do the same thing with native, or people say sometimes vanilla JavaScript. So JavaScript without anything else on top, which is something that few people use these days. There's lots of different libraries that people like to use on the web. JavaScript is also the language that is used in most every website that you see to make them interactive, so that they're not just a static page, but you can click something else happens, there's an animation. All of that mostly is done in JavaScript, most of it. Do we have any questions so far? This is like, I'm trying to lay the ground, like the foundation of everything. If you already program, this might be very, very, very basic for you. But if you don't, this can still be confusing. So that's the right time to ask a question if you're confused. That is, I'm trying to explain what is a program, what is a programming language, and yeah, this is already actually a lot. If you never touched any of those concepts, I see that Win is writing. So far, so good. Good. One thing I want to mention, because that's something that I remember being scary for me when I started. I don't know if that's still something that people think about, but when you program, you think like, you're interacting with your computer in a way that you're not used to. So usually you click buttons and you download the program and it's made for your computer. And so, you feel like everything's in control. It's fine. You can't really mess it up very much. When you're programming, you might be thinking like, oh, but if I write the wrong thing, I erase all my files or something. This is not a concern at all, especially not in P5.js. It's running in the sandbox inside the browser. So you can write whatever you want. You can do whatever you can try whatever you want. Nothing's going to break. The worst that can happen is that your tab is going to crash and then you can close it and open a new one. And you'll be fine. So don't worry at all about experimenting, writing whatever you want. Just do it. Like, do it now. Just erase all of this, write whatever you want, and see what happens. It's probably not going to work, but nothing's going to break. If I just type whatever and I run it, it's just going to complain here. You see that's called the console at the bottom. And that's where it's going to scream at me if I write stuff that doesn't make sense. That's what the console is, and that's an error here. So it says, yeah, this word here is not defined. That means it doesn't know this. It looked in the dictionary of JavaScript, it looked in the dictionary of P5.js, and none of them had a word that was whatever this is. So yeah, this doesn't work. But these words are in there. Function, for example, and setup, and create canvas, and draw, and background. All these words are there and they exist, and they make sense, and they amount to draw a gray square on the screen. All right. Should I go faster? Should I go slower? I'm going very slow. I don't think I've ever gone that slow, but okay. All right. So what you have here, and I see it's still red from my earlier error. That's not supposed to be the case, but yeah, okay, it's gone. So let's unpack a little bit what we have here. So we have our play button here. We have a stop. So if I want to stop it, and we have a bunch of different features up there that we can use to create a new sketch. A sketch, by the way, in P5.js is what we call a program, and that's a carry on from processing, where programs are also called sketches, and that should suggest to you that programming, and in particular creative coding and programming in P5.js is a metaphor for a sketchbook. So it's meant to be somewhere you can try things, and like if you're doodling in a sketchbook, you can just doodle some code and see what happens. And because you can run it quickly, you don't have to wait for it to compile. That's a thing that exists in some other programming languages. Here it runs immediately, so you can try something, see what happens, and then go back, change it. That's the process of creative coding. We're going to do that now. I don't know what I'm going to do today. I didn't plan anything, and that's the beauty of it. But let's read these words and try to understand. So a function. So we have two functions here that are already declared for us, defined, which are setup and draw. This is the way that a function is structured. You need to tell P5.js or tell JavaScript or tell your browser that you want to call a function, or to declare a function, sorry. Call it setup. These parentheses, right now there's nothing in them, but sometimes you will have stuff in them. Actually, you have stuff in them here. So you see those parentheses are the same that those parentheses. They're just like telling what should be inside of a function. And here we have these curly braces that define a block of code. So that means that all the lines of code that we're going to put in there, they're going to be like one statement that is like compound. And all of these are going to be like essentially the body of the functions that is set up. And then we have draw. And inside of draw, we see a function called background, and it has a number here. And create canvas here also has a bunch of numbers here. So just to remind you what happens when we click play, this happens. So what would you imagine that these numbers mean here in create canvas? And if you're running it yourself, try to change these numbers and see what happens. But if you're not, please try to guess. Tell me what those numbers are.
Is it maybe the height or some measurement for the size or something like that?
Perfect. Yes, absolutely. You're right. And Reverse Butcher also got it. So yes, Franco. And what would you imagine the units for these numbers are?
That would be height and length, I guess.
So
something like that.
Width and height.
Width and height.
Oh yeah, Ellaby and Joel got it. So yeah, pixels. So pixels. Maybe you've heard the term pixels before. Maybe in pixel art. But in this particular case, pixels are a unit of measurement that is the smallest amount of color information that you can have on a screen. Essentially, if you took a magnifying glass to your screen, LCD close up. So let's say an LCD display is made of these tiny light emitting elements. That if you can mute yourself again, I think I'm getting some echo. Thank you. So yeah, so these, or maybe I'll do it. Can I do it? No. Yeah, I can. So yeah, so if you looked at your screen from very, very close, you would see that it's made of these modules that are three, like red, green, and blue, emitting, like light emitting elements. I'm saying elements because depending on the technology, it might be different things. But yeah, you can decide how bright each of those are. And this is defining the colors. But here we're talking about width and height. So it's 400 pixels by 400 pixels. So if I said 800 pixels by 400, there I have a wider canvas. That's what this is. This is literally called a canvas. And we're creating a canvas of 800 pixels by 400 pixels. 800 pixels width, 400 pixels height. How do I know this? And do I need to change those numbers like for every function that I ever see to see what it means? Fortunately not. What I can do is I can click on help and reference, or go directly to p5js.org/reference. And this is going to be your best friend, the reference. You might think like after you finish learning, which is already a funny concept, after you're done learning P5JS, you'll never need to open the reference again. I'm here to tell you that's not the case. I still, every time I program in whatever language, whatever library, I always have the reference open so I can go check what this or that means. But here, if I look for create canvas, you'll see that I can open a page dedicated entirely to create canvas. It describes what the method is. And if I scroll down a little bit, it tells me what the parameters are. So this is what those are. They're called parameters. And there's 2 plus 1 optional one. That's what those brackets mean, that it's optional, renderer. And so we're not using it right now. And the width of the canvas and the height of the canvas are the first two, WH. The renderer is to tell whether we want to use the default one, which is P2D, or WebGL for 3D sketches. So yeah, that's how you tell what those are. And background, what do you reckon this number means? 220. Any guesses?
That's the color. I started playing and I changed the numbers. And if I go lower than 220, it gives me a darker gray. And if I go higher, it gives me sort of a white.
Yes. And how high did you go?
I went at a high 320, and then he gave me white, and 300 gave me white, and then 0 gave me black.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's interesting. So you say you went to 300, 320, and it was white, and it stayed white. That's another one. Like how far, like how high can I make it? If I go 300, it's white. If I go 3,000, it's also white. So there's a maximum, and after that, it gets white and it stays white. It can't get any whiter, like a gentrified neighborhood. So that's something we can check here. If I look at background, and I looked, and I look here. Where is it? So there's the background and all the ones with colors. They're quite complex because we have many different ways that we can specify color. But here, yeah, there you are. It tells me that the value goes from 0 to 255. That means 256 possible values, including 0. And this is for reasons related to the way that computer memory works. And we're not going to get into this, but if you're interested in how computers work, go and have a look at like what a bit is, what a byte is, how computer memory works, and that you will come across why 256 is a significant number. But 255 in this case is the maximum. And after that, anything higher than this is just going to stay the same. And it goes the same for negative values. If I go below 0, it's not going to make any difference. 0 is the smallest value. In some programming languages, if I use the value that is outside of the range of the possible values, it might throw an error, like in the console, write some red words at me, telling me, oh, this value is not possible, and just crash the program. In this case, with P5 and with JavaScript, usually JavaScript is pretty user friendly in that way, if you want to call it that, or tolerant or flexible. It will try to make your program work, even if you write things that are a little weird. This can be a good or a bad thing. Because you might not realize that you made a mistake, and then it has a consequence later in your program when you try something else. But for now, just know that for colors, you can use values between 0 and 255 by default. So right now we have grayscale value, but what if we wanted to have colors? So you maybe saw already in here in the reference that we have examples of colors, and there's various ways to get colors. The first one that is suggested here, so by default grayscale, and then if you use more than one parameter, namely 3, if you use 3 parameters, here I can copy paste those values, you can get different color. So these values, maybe you saw it already in the reference, but what do you think these values mean? And if you dealt with, yes, that's for RGB. What does RGB mean? And if you've seen the photo before, there was a yes, there was a hint. So red, green, and blue. And this is because of the way that our eyes, bravo. So this is because of the way that our eyes work. Like we have these cells in our eyes. So in the retina, cells that are meant to see red, green, and blue, right? And they're differently sensitive. This gets really complex, but yeah, you have these cones and rods, and this is how we perceive brightness and color. Yeah, creepy. So yeah, our display, our computer digital displays are basically doing a trick, because the real world has many more frequencies of light, but digital displays, they only need to use the 3 because that's how our eyes function. So it's basically an illusion that happens in the computer. and we only need to tweak those 3 values to access different colors. So if I change this one, it's already a maximum 255. So 255 red, 204 green, and 0 blue. There's no blue at all. So you can see that here, red and green make yellow. And this is different from the way that you mix paint, because if you mix red and green paint, you might notice it's not making yellow. But if you mix red and green light, then it does. So yeah, just go ahead and try changing those values, see what happens. You can play around with those values, try to see which color, try to think if you want to make a specific color, try to make purple, say. If you wanted to make purple, what would it take? Just play around with it until you get purple. And I'm just gonna take a glug of water, and if you have questions, please ask now. You got purple randomly. Well done. Any questions?
Yeah, is there a way you can
anything that was unclear, or if you're confused, please let me know. Otherwise, we'll move on. Can you unmute? Oh, yeah, sorry, I muted you. Can I unmute you? Yes, there you go.
Yeah, I have a question. So is there a way you can actually tell which colors are you going to get? Is it like a reference, like a way of approaching it? Or is this like a pure trying out and figuring out the spectrum, I guess? This should be some way of kind of knowing which colors you will get.
Yes, of course. So, sorry, I shouldn't say of course. It's not obvious, but yes, you can absolutely do that. And yeah, it would be pretty tiresome if you had to always try to guess what colors do what, or learn by heart which values do the colors you like. If you ever used a software like Photoshop, for example, that has a color picker, you can actually get those values RGB, or those values expressed in a different, encoded in a different way. That's like something that's called hexadecimal values, which we do have here, right here. And yeah, Nathaniel, you're right. There are websites that have such color pickers or color palettes, and so here's color picker for an image, but image color picker, or you can have only one image file. No, that's not what I wanted to do. Color picker. Oh yeah, even Google has a built-in color picker. So you see, I can select the kind of color that I want. That's technically called a hue, and then move into brighter or darker or more saturated, less saturated. Those are the technical terms for colors. So this is a very saturated color, and this is a half saturated, and this is no saturation at all, so gray. And yeah, more brighter, darker, and the hue is this. And there's different colors, different ways to represent color, which are called color spaces. And this is a really big rabbit hole, so I'm not going to get into it, even though it's very interesting. But if you're interested in the way that colors are represented in a computer, color spaces are a fascinating thing to explore. All right. So yeah, we can go get our color from a color picker like this, and then I could take these RGB values from Google here and go and paste them there. It is maybe not the most efficient way to do it, but it definitely works. And you could use also some websites like I don't know, Fabvelo, to get color palettes. Interesting color palettes, extract them from an image as well. You can do that with this website. You just drag an image on it. Coolers has also, some some cool collections of. Oops, no, that's not what I meant to write. Coolors, some color palettes, collections that you can pick. Yeah, there you go. So that's it for colors. Okay, I've gone very, very slow, so we haven't moved very far, but at least hopefully you got the basics already. And now let's make something a little more interesting. So what if I wanted to draw a circle? So parameters for a circle, either you look in the reference or try to guess what the parameters for a circle would be. Can I get a guess? What's your best guess? How many parameters and what would they be?
It's ratio or like something related to the measurement or the size of it, like that.
Yeah.
You know, how do you call that, ratio?
Yeah, and then what else? Anybody else wants to try a guess? So the radius and.
Well, like, I guess it could also be width and length also as well.
Yeah, it could be. Though a circle is always the same width and length. But yeah, so let's say I wanted a circle with a 50 radius. I'm going to try this, but then it doesn't work. And see, in the console, I get an error, a friendly error that's from P5.js. It has something called a friendly error system. And the friendly error says, circle is expecting at least 3 arguments, but received only 1. And then you have a link to the reference, which is great. So I can go and check what those are. Location for the circle, X and Y. Yes, absolutely right, Nathaniel and Layla. So yeah, the parameters for a circle are X, Y, and D for diameter. It's actually not the radius, it's the diameter. I always get confused. But yeah, so this is math again. Oh no. That's a good point. You know, I hated math at school. I wasn't very good at it, and I really only started to understand math when I started to make cool moving things in processing. So there's hope for everyone, and you don't need to know math very well either. So let's say, let's give it some values for location. So X is the position, the horizontal position, and Y is the vertical position. And yeah, if you remember math from school, you know what those mean. And so yeah, it's the position like 100 pixels from the left of the canvas. We put it here. 100 pixels from the top of the canvas. So it's here. It's like there's a grid of pixels, and you choose where on that grid you want to position it. A bit like if you were playing, this claw machine, where you like move it one way and then move it the other way, and then lower the claw. That's pretty much this. And it doesn't have to be static. I could also make this based on the mouse position, for example. Let's try that. So we have these are called variables. So you see they are a different color now. They're pink. And mouse X and mouse Y, sorry, are values that exist in P5, and they are the position of my mouse cursor over the canvas. And so if I do this, now I have the circle that follows my mouse. It's very quick to do something interactive. See? How does that sound? Okay. Any questions so far, or some things you want to see? What else should I do next? I have an idea of something I want to do, but I'll hear you if you have questions. We have another, 15 minutes? How much time did we have? I might miss the 2 hours. Oh, no, we have more time. We have until, okay, no, that's fine. We have 45 minutes. Whew. Yeah.
By the way, you can stay here as long as you wish. We usually just put the time consideration just as a time consideration, but it's absolutely no limits to what you want to do.
Cool. Yeah, no, I think the last time it was an hour and a half, and this time is 2 hours, so that's good. I can take my time. Can you make the color interactive? Yes, that's a great suggestion, Win. Absolutely. Reverse butter, no, number, math, logic. Okay, you're having a conversation about math. Great. So yeah, let's make the color interactive. So, how about? Oh, you know what? Before I do that, I want to show you something about variables, because these are what we would call built-in variables, in the sense that they are the default. Franco, can you mute yourself, because there's some sound coming from your. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, no problem. So yeah, those built-in variables, their value, so that you see that they have a name, and their value is defined by P5.js. It's doing all of this in the background. We don't have to write it ourselves. That's the part when I said a library is code that somebody else wrote, so you don't have to. So in the background, P5 is looking at the position of the cursor and putting that value inside of the mouse X variable and mouse Y variable. Okay, Abby, ciao, ciao. And Nathaniel as well, ciao. So yeah, these are variables that are built into P5.js, but we can also create our own variables. Say I wanted the diameter to change, depending on whether, well, could be time or whether I click the mouse, something like that. So I could write var diameter and give it the value that we have already, for example, so 50. Oh yeah, I forgot to put the semicolon. In JavaScript, you don't necessarily have to finish your line with a semicolon. It's optional. I tend to omit it, but some people are very very adamant about keeping it. So let's do it the old-fashioned way. So diameter. So now I have declared, in the same way that we declare function here, I declare variable. See, it's the same color. So that's the type of the thing that we want to declare. Var for variable. We give it a name, diameter, and we give it a value. The equal sign here is a little bit different from what you would see in math, where it says, oh, what's on both sides of this equal sign? We're asserting the fact that those are equal. This is a little bit different. It's a bit like saying, okay, so now I declared this variable. So it's a position in the memory of the computer. It's empty for now. It's just pointing at a spot in the memory of the computer and saying, okay, please reserve that spot, reserve a little bit of space in the memory for me to store something. And then you say, here's a value, please write that value in that space in the memory. So this is what is happening behind the scene. Like, we're really actually writing bits of information, little zeros and ones in the memory of the computer at a specific spot, that instead of giving you an address in the memory that is something that would be very hard for a human to remember, we say we want to give it a name, and it's going to be diameter, and that makes everything much easier for us. But in the background, there's some kind of long list, a name that's made of a bunch of numbers and letters, maybe, depending how you want to represent it, that tells you where in memory it is. But you don't have to worry about this. And so once we have this label, we can call it at any time to retrieve that value. And if I copy diameter and I put it here instead of the 50, and I run the program again, nothing changes. And this is because this is still equal 50. But say I wanted to make it bigger, I could change the value here, and magically, this value is teleported here because this diameter here, this label, is still pointing to the same spot in the memory of the computer. So when I said write 100 in that spot in the memory, like say here, and then here I say diameter, it knows to go here, grab that value, and bring it into the program. Does that make sense? I hope it does. That's a very important concept. Variables are super useful, and you're going to see them used everywhere. It does make sense? Great. So yeah, once you understand what a variable is and how to use it, you're going to have superpowers because you can reuse this variable many times. So say I wanted to draw another circle. We can do some basic math, like addition. We can add things. See, it's not too bad. We can add things. So say I copy paste that line, and I want to draw another circle a little to the right of the first circle. What would you do? Imagine that you wanted to do this, because right now it's just writing this. If I run it, it's drawing the same circle twice. So I can't even see it because it's drawing two circles on top of each other, right? It draws the first one, then it draws the second one exactly the same size, exactly the same position. Yes, reverse butcher, make your brain do math. Yeah, how would you make a second circle a little bit to the right? Mouse X plus 100. Yeah, for example, exactly. So if we do this, now we have two circles, one next to each other. Now say I change the diameter to make it 150. And I run it again. Now we see something interesting, right? So we see that the first circle is still at the position of the mouse. The second circle is a little to the right, but it overlaps with the first one. It's on top. And that's a very, very important concept, another one, which is the order of execution of the code. So when we write these things, they get interpreted by your computer through the browser. And it's going to read these lines of code in the order that they are written on the page, just like you read a book. So it goes here and it reads each character one after the other, like this, until it finds something it doesn't understand and crashes. But if it doesn't, it will just keep going like this, all the way to the bottom of the code. There are ways that you can force it to go back and read it again and change some things, but the basic way that it works is it just goes through your code like that. And because we draw a circle first, the one that is on the mouse, and we draw a second circle, the one that is a little bit to the right, the second circle is drawn on top. I feel like I'm repeating myself, but maybe it bears repeating. Is that clear for everybody? Why one circle is on top of the other? It overlaps? Yes, yeah, cool.
Is that because of the order of the code? Like how you the circle which one's first or something like that?
So if I was, say, if I put that circle first,
yeah, it will go.
You can see that now the other one is on top because it's second in the order.
Yeah, perfect.
And now, say we wanted them to be side by side like they were before, no matter how big the diameter is. Well, how would you do that? We have a variable now. So, you've seen we did mouse X plus 100, mouse X plus diameter. Interesting idea. Interesting concept. How about that? So it looks like it's working, but we'll only know if we change the value of the diameter. Yeah, it still works. And now I have an idea. Do you think we could take that diameter and change it dynamically? How about that? So I don't need to say var again because we already declared it. We already, gave it a position in memory. It's there. But what we can do is we can update it. So right now you see there's a yellow line under it because I didn't finish the assignment. I didn't finish the line. And yeah, it just it's waiting for something more. So I can do equal again and replace the value in memory that is there. And say, I could do mouse X. Since we have it, we know how it works. So now, see, the further to the right I am, the bigger the circle. And they're still staying next to each other. How cool is that? Put them on the same line, maybe, if you want them next to each other. No, yeah, no, that's a good guess. But no, we need to do this with numbers. So the order, the position, like I could write everything on one line, but that wouldn't change anything to the layout. What's important is the order of execution. Putting things to the next line, it's just for convenience for you to be able to read it. But technically, all of these could be on the same line, and the code would still work. I can do this. It's going to be very hard to read, but it's not significant. The line breaks, they don't do anything in JavaScript. In JavaScript, they don't do anything. In Python, it's different. But yeah. And if I had a very messy sketch like this with a bunch of spaces and things that are not very, very clean, I can go to to edit, tidy code, and then it will put it back into a nice and readable format. And I like it with some spaces. Okay, any questions, confusions, requests? We still haven't done the colors, so I'm going to do that next. But yeah, any other questions?
Yes, I have a question. So I was talking before this about this animation. So what happens in this browser now if you put like diameter equals diameter plus 1, for example? So it keeps updating and it will grow bigger every millisecond. So if I want to make an animation of this going up and down, like every second.
So let's do it. Yeah. Now diameter equals diameter plus 1. So it's going to keep growing forever. Yeah, you can absolutely do that. This is a little bit of it's interesting that you came up with this, but it's a bit of a confusing thing for some people because you have diameter equals itself plus 1, but really it's the value of diameter in the previous frame. And I haven't explained what frames are, so that's actually a little bit my bad. I haven't really explained how setup and draw actually work. That's terrible. I should have started with that. So, but you didn't ask. And how is it working? So setup only runs once. So it's a built-in function of P5, and it runs only once at the beginning. So runs once. Because we only need to create the canvas once, right? We don't need to recreate it every time. We have it, we use it. But then the draw, as you can see, it keeps changing. So if I only read if this code got executed only once, we wouldn't be able to make any kind of animation like this. So this is actually running again and again and again, etc. Up to 60 frames per second, 60 times per second. That's a lot. If everything goes fine, it runs 60 times per second. If your code starts to be very heavy, very complicated, very complex, expensive to run, then it might run slower. Does the color of the font means anything in the code? I get only blue when I type. The code, yeah. So that's what's called syntax highlighting, and it's going to be different depending on the editor that you use. So whether it's blue or pink or green or whatever, you can choose which colors you want. Not in this one, but in different text editor or like code editor, you will get different colors. But they are significant in the sense in like within one editor, they're consistent. So here the pink ones are the built-in variables, the objects that are So built-in functions are blue and bold, so background, circle, and well, I'm saying that maybe I guess also your own functions. So functions, when you call them, are blue and bold. Those type keywords are brown. So yeah, it depends on the type of keyword that you use. I thought there was some type of classification. Yes, there is. But your custom variables, they're gonna be blue. But if you type var, it should be brown. If you do var and a name for your variable, the var should be brown. If it's not, then there's a problem. Yeah, no problem. All right. So yeah, let's do one last thing with the colors, and then I wanted to keep some time for you to ask me questions if you have them about the process, because right now we're not really doing. I mean, we're making art, but it's still pretty simple. So yeah, what shall we do? I actually want to try something, because now I see this and I want to do something. I want to use the rotate function. Rotate. And we're going to rotate depending on the number of the frame. And that's another built-in function that I like a lot, called frame count. Frame count. It's going to be a bit fast. Oh, it's too fast. Yeah, you know what? I'm not going to do that because I realize it's going to make me introduce way too many new concepts at once. So let's not do that. But you have a rotate function. So okay, colors. How about we create a variable, var background color. And I'm not going to give it a value yet. In the setup, I'm going to say background color equals color. And there, give it the color we want. So I'm going to reuse this one. And here, background is going to be background color. And then if we want to change the background color when we click, I can do, there's a function for this, and we can go in the reference and find it. Mouse press, mouse clicked. Yeah, it's mouse clicked. So mouse clicked, function mouse clicked. Okay, so I know how it works now. So I can do function, and I add my function at the bottom of my program. Mouse clicked, but I can still call it from anywhere inside the program. That's a cool thing about JavaScript. Function mouse clicked, background color equals. Oh, that's actually. If I do this, yeah, well, I'll do it. We'll see what happens. Mouse clicked, and then we're gonna change it to some different value. Okay, so run. Now I click, and it changes to purple. Hey, there's our purple. But now if I click again, it doesn't do anything, because every time I click the mouse, it makes it purple, but it's already purple. So yeah, that would be a good exercise, actually. How do you make it go from purple to blue and then back? It's not so trivial, but you have all the elements that you need to do it, potentially. Do you? I think you do. But yeah, any questions? I think I want to stop there with adding new concepts. I think you should have an understanding of the basics. I will give you a link to a page that has a lot more resources that I put together for beginners, and you will get some tutorials and some books and all sorts of resources to go further. And if you have any questions, I'm always available. But yeah, I want to take questions. We can still go back to the code if you have questions about the code, but I wanted to give you some opportunity also to ask more general questions about generative art, creative coding, the creative process, we'll talk about everything to do with specifically with NFTs, interactive NFTs, FX hash, all that stuff in 2 weeks. But here's more the time for questions related to the art practice of being a generative artist or creative coder. So yeah, I'm here for questions. We still have 20 or so minutes.
Thanks so much, Raphael, for this. This was amazing. It makes me see how much how just a few lines of code and just switching them up can really make things interactive and change. And I have a question about when is generative art when you're only using lines of code, you can make some really clever things. And I'm wondering, is it possible to incorporate kind of drawn images or like GIF layers to generative art, or is it no longer generative art if there's elements of stuff that's non-generative, like something that I made myself? And is it possible to do that in a line of code? Or would you, yeah, so it's kind of, how do you incorporate non-generative aspects, and is it possible to kind of blend the two together?
Yeah, absolutely. You can totally add images, and instead of these circles, we could have a GIF, a PNG, anything. You'll find no shortage of opinions about what is and isn't generative art, but I don't think that semantic debates are very interesting. You do the art that you want to do, and it should be good enough for anyone. I've created pieces that used sprites like PNGs. Actually, let me go to object, my created page, and that's going to be tricky. Need to look at the Higetnung stuff only. My very first piece on Higetnung actually was using sprites, and it was an exported video from P5.js, but it's not interactive. So yeah, this is the image of the burb is it's a PNG. Actually, I drew it on paper and scanned it, and then used it inside of P5, and I changed the color programmatically in the code, but the drawing itself is so it's a hybrid thing. So you can absolutely do that, and I don't think anybody should have anything to say about it if you want to say that it's generative art. Yeah, this was also a similar idea, was filling a space with the same drawing but bigger and smaller, and something called space filling algorithm. In particular, this one kind is called circle packing. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, that was super helpful. I'm just kind of thinking of ways to incorporate some of the Lino cut and GIF animations that I have, but in a generative way. And so it's interesting to see that. And I guess just to follow up, do you have you just sent a Notion site, which looks helpful. In what direction, could you point me in any direction on where to learn further about using GIFs and sprites within P5.js?
I don't have a specific, can't think right now of a specific tutorial that would be about that. But what I can recommend, and that goes for everybody, since you're all already on Discord, I have my own Discord called the Burb's Nest, for reasons that should be clear by now. That's a very nice and small community of creative coders and people doing all sorts of funny stuff with code, and they're very helpful. So if you go there and ask, I think they will know, even when I don't. We have a channel called Asking for Help, and if you go there and ask that, I'm pretty sure you should get some interesting answers. And maybe I will remember something by that time that I read your message.
Thanks so much. I just joined the Discord. Cheers.
Awesome. I'll see you there. So yeah, any other questions?
I have a question. To be quick. Can you share your Twitch channel? And I also just joined the Discord. It's amazing. Thank you for your patience and explaining to us so slowly. I think we need that sometimes. When it goes fast, we just like, what? So
Yeah, I try to always remember how confusing the stuff was when I was starting. And so, yeah, things that might seem obvious for you, even after you spent a year or two learning it, it's not a given, and it's not obvious. And there's still lots of things that I kind of I'm sure I used some words without defining them. So feel free to ask if something wasn't defined, wasn't explained properly. Yeah, I can show you a bunch of my own generative work. Question. That was a question above. Okay, I'd love to hear what your creative process is like. Do you have an idea of what your final output will be? You go with the flow. It depends. So sometimes I do. Sometimes I like this. For example, this piece it was complete. I started with a grid of squares, and then I started making them bigger and smaller, and it's still a grid of squares, but you can't really see that it is. And there's different, like the colors are different for each person who looks. Sometimes I have a more defined idea of what I want. I don't know which. Well, the ones that I showed with the birds, for example, I had a basic idea that I wanted to do shape packing. A lot of my work is explorative. Maybe sometimes I have an aesthetic that I want to reach. Like I did this whole series inspired by 1920s expressionist cinema, and this was so. This is also generative and real time. You can actually, yeah. So it's lagging a bit on that screen, but yeah. Anyway, the probably the screen sharing is laggy already, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, so. The film grain is not generative, unfortunately. I want to get to that at some point. But yeah, you can see the code. I actually also coded that into the piece that you can see the code in the NFT itself. But yeah, I knew the aesthetic I wanted, but I didn't know exactly which look I was going to get. And I was doing this relatively regularly and just like pick where I left off, change a few parameters, see what happens. That's usually my process, and that's kind of classic creative coding in a way. This idea of tweaking and like I did today. I didn't really know what I was going to do. I mean, we didn't really get to anything very elaborate, but I kind of like to do that. Just explore, tweak, and see what happens. But sometimes I have a more specific idea of what I want. I can't I can't think of actually a piece where I exactly knew what I wanted to do. So I guess my process is very explorative. But this is probably the closest to a piece that had the plan that I have. And in this case, let me see if I. So this was a series of generative gems, and I wanted to do something that looked like real gems, but also not. And so there was a lot of technicality to this. That was let me try to find. I have my So here you see, I was really trying to get that shape and understand how to do it, and so this required planning and sketching and trial and error, like a lot of it. Like this is some process pictures from that piece. Early stuff that didn't really look the way I wanted. Spent a lot of time trying to really nail the texture, making the mesh for the gem and the texture mapping, and not wearing pants. And trying to make it work on different browsers, also really tricky part of the process when you do stuff for FXhash. So this is this is, I hope, an answer to your question. I see another question from Yuri. Question: can I do these fly-through collages with Three.js? So let me see what it is.
Yeah, I started doing this with.
Interesting. Yeah, 3JS. Yeah, I mean that would totally be doable in 3JS. 3JS. So we haven't talked about 3JS at all. It's a different library. So there's P5JS, which is this library that's really meant to be approachable for beginners, and it also has a very strong ethos of inclusivity and accessibility, which I really love. 3JS is a more like technical, professional tool that is a little harder to learn. Honestly, I mean, myself, I tried to learn it a couple times and it really struggled. So, I mean, don't let that discourage you. It's actually, I think there are a lot of really good tutorials. I was just lazy, but yeah, definitely P5JS is a little easier. It does also do 3D, so you could do something like this in P5JS as well. But 3JS is a more purpose-built 3D 3D creation tool or 3D library. So you can do more complex things in 3JS, and it's going to be a bit more robust. P5JS can do 3D, and it does, for simple things like that, it shouldn't be a problem. But if you get into some more advanced stuff, you might start to run against the limitations of what P5JS can do with 3D. Can I ask which library you'd recommend for focusing on light rendering? Light rendering, yeah. Well, in that case, what do you mean exactly by light rendering? Because I haven't. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know if this means that it has to have like a better interaction with like using WebGL. If you're trying to create like a 3D space where you can have light sources and then be able to sort of take in that information of where the light falls. I mean, I know this is specific, but just in general, like, is there a library that treats or has like a really nice sort of in-depth sort of library section about controlling and creating different light sources, like, and controlling different variables around like how light is simulated in a digital space?
I'm thinking React 3 Fiber might be good at, but I have no idea how approachable it is for beginners. It's using React and 3JS. We're getting into like technical stuff, but I think it's supposed to be pretty good for like really glossy 3D render stuff, like real-time 3D on the web. It has some really cool examples. So if you're going for this sort of glossy magazine 3D stuff,
that makes sense.
It's able to do these things, but I haven't used it myself, so I can't really tell you. It looks very impressive when you look at the examples, and I know people who use it and love it, but I can't tell you much more about it. But yeah, it's called React 3 Fiber, and it uses 3JS also under the hood. I don't know how much 3JS you need to write yourself if you use React 3 Fiber. But yeah, here you can see like clearly we have some nice light going on.
Yeah, that looks awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. I'll put the link to the examples page. You can explore further. Yeah, anybody else? Any other questions? We still have a couple minutes. Anything you wanted to see in the code? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So, have you ever worked in like coding thing for like a physical thing? Like an installation or like I said before, some interactive, stuff before? Have you worked with that kind of projects?
Yeah. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk about that. So yeah, I did. I did work on a couple of things. I mean, that's how I started. I did some installation pieces, and so I have. Can I show this? Where is it? Yeah. So, for example, my first like really big art piece, and you have to hear the sound because it's much nicer with the sound. Was a sculpture that showed its own price, and And that's actually when I got, that was in 2014, 2015. That's when I got interested in crypto for the first time, but it couldn't really do what I wanted, so I gave up. I didn't get into crypto, but I looked into it. And yeah, the idea was that it would change based on, like, it would be more or less expensive based on how popular I was or how popular the piece itself was, and some information about the stock market and art market. And, you know, now you have all of this built in basically with NFTs, but the idea was, yeah, it was NFT adjacent in 2015 or 2014. So yeah, this was always custom electronics and those displays I found on a secondhand website. But yeah, that was an interesting project. It has never really been finished, but it took a lot of time. And I also worked with the Graffiti Research Lab Germany on this installation called Light Bombing, where we were. Oh, I'm gonna turn off the sound for myself. Where we had graffiti artists painting on a digital graffiti display, the screen, custom screen. Also, the hardware for the spray can was custom. And I wrote some shaders for the spray simulation, and then we had this big projector projecting on the wall. And this was done in processing. Yeah, that was at a festival in Lausanne, as you can tell. And the last one I want to show you was when I was working at Art+Com, where we made this piece for an exhibition at the Akademie der Künste, Academy of the Arts in Berlin, where the idea was that people were, let's skip a bit the introduction. So you would get in, that's a younger me. And yeah, you walk in, you have this black monolith. You're sort of guided to gaze at this glowing square rectangle. And we had this really high resolution camera inside, behind the glass, and a gaze tracker, so eye tracking, also behind the glass. And you would start to distort your own eye as you look around, and it starts to tear in the middle. So it's pretty unsettling. Actually, this is supposed to be the most unsettling part of it. But we had a lady walk in. She sat down, got to the point where your face zoomed in into the eye, and before even it started to go wiggly, she just freaked out and ran out of the space. And I was pretty happy with that result. If your art can make people run out in terror, I think you did something right. But yeah, so, and this was like a remake of a piece by Joachim Sauter, who was my boss on this one, and the founder of Art+Com. And in the original version of this piece, they were Joachim Sauter. In the original version of this piece from 1992, was one of the very early piece of interactive art. There wasn't so much interactive art back then because it was very complicated to make anything interactive in real time. And yeah, it already had the eye tracker, and you were looking at a piece by, I believe it was Hans Holbein. And yeah, as you looked at it, you were destroying the artwork. But for this new one, actually, the museum had asked, that's kind of a backstory, the museum had asked for the original. They wanted to exhibit the original because it was a retrospective of like whatever. But Joachim Sauter had no interest in playing by the rules. And so he decided to make an entirely new piece and ask me to lead the project. You can have a link for those. And so instead, I was kind of excited by the idea of digital archaeology and rebuilding the original, because like everything was lost. The hardware was, imagine, computers from 1992. So yeah, you actually kind of see how it looks. Yeah, it was like this huge machine in the back that was the size of a fridge. They don't actually show it; you can just see the diagram. But yeah, they had this huge silicon graphic computer and almost like a TV camera, and the giant screen. So everything got really much more compact. Like the eye tracker, instead of being this big camera and entire computer, was like just the size of a pencil case. In 2016, what was it when we did it? Really ahead of its time. But yeah, so we we showed them that we made a completely different piece, and I think the curators were not too happy about it. So we got like the piece was put in the corner of the exhibition in the back behind the curtain. But still, people were still queuing for it. So I think the word of mouth worked. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. Shadow banned. Yes, exactly. We're shadow banned from the exhibition. But anyway, I can still say that we exhibited next to Namjoon Paik, so that was cool. And yeah, there was another question. So the link. Oh yeah, the link. So this is the link for the original, and this is the link. Link for the remake. So, and the other question was, do you have any suggestions on what tools can extend interactivity in NFTs? Any libraries, artist-friendly for interaction via the browser, for example, with video camera? You can do that with P5.js. You can do interaction with video camera with P5.js. And if you want to do some more advanced stuff, I already talked about it at the beginning. You have ML5 and hands-free. So ML5 is a great one for anything machine learning, including face tracking and things like an object recognition. And hands-free for anything, specifically hand tracking and hand tracking, face tracking, body tracking. Yeah. Any other questions? We still have 2 minutes. I can stay a little longer if you want to have a chat, but then I will need to go. If we're out of questions, I will just say thank you very much for having me. That was fun. I'll see you in 2 weeks. I think it's in 2 weeks for the sort of FX Hash, Teya and company interactive NFT stuff. So we'll get a little more into what it takes to make a generative NFT and get into iterations and variations and features, but also interactive NFTs on platforms like Teya and Object and Versum. You're welcome.
Awesome.
Glad you liked it. And again, if you have any questions, you can find me or my friendly Burbs on my Discord, Burbs Nest, and I'm also on Twitter at Sableraph. Sableraph is my handle. I did not scare you off coding. Well, that's everything I ever wanted, so I'm very happy to hear that. And you can find me on Twitch as well. So on Twitch, I stream on Tuesdays a format called Creative Code News, where I review some of the cool stuff that happened in the world of creative coding in the last 7 days. And every Sunday, I have a challenge. The last one, my community thought it would be hilarious that the topic, they vote on the topic, and last week they thought it would be hilarious that the topic was my full name and job title. So it was a little weird, but yeah, people make some fun stuff. and I have fun reviewing it. Yeah, so there you go. That's